Hello, everybody. Welcome to Region Football Weekly here in our beautiful Centier Bank studio in Highland, Indiana. I'm Jack Thiel. Alongside me will be Mike Dewan. Today, we're going to go over our top 10 rankings and some matchups that we should look for this week, week 2 here for high school football. So, Mike, last week we got to see how these teams are going to look so far. Obviously, one game doesn't determine how a team's going to look, but we saw a lot of good. We saw a lot of interesting things. And, I'm kind of curious to start off our show. What was one of the most interesting things you took away from the week 1 action?
Yeah, man, it's good to be back. We love football season. It's good that it's finally here. It's tough to judge those teams as we see in our top 10 countdown that we're going to go into. But a lot of decent upsets, I think, on our part that at least we judge as upsets. A lot of players that we need to highlight. A lot of talent going around.
Yeah.
And, I'm excited to get into it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to go over all those rankings. We'll start with the honorable mentions just because these are teams who, with the win, and they could sneak their way up there a little bit. One of the teams that we'll focus on right now is the LaPorte Slicers. They won their first game against New Prairie. It was a close game. A lot of people, were talking about it on our post-game show last week. Mike, one win and they're in? Or, what do you want to see from them going into this week?
Yeah, we just got them outside. I know we definitely needed to talk about LaPorte. The LaPorte faithful is very big on where they are going into this week, and we got them, on our bubble. 20-18 win over New Prairie, a team that they haven't really beaten that opener since 2018. So that was a huge win. I know game-winning kick, so that's probably one of the top moments of week 1. But we kind of look at where New Prairie was last year. They lost in state. Great team, ran through us up here in the 4A. And they lost a lot of pieces last year on that state team. To start, they had their quarterback, Marshall, correct me if I'm wrong on his last name, Kamichik, who was a senior, or they do have him this year, my mistake. They do have him going into this year. He's their senior quarterback who had a solid game against LaPorte in that opener. He's their senior quarterback who had over 30 touchdowns last year and was a 4A junior All-State a year ago. They have Hayden Scott, which is one of the top junior linebackers, I'd say, in the state. Had 100-plus tackles as a sophomore last year and had 4 picks. And Dylan Wilson, who was a senior D lineman who had 6 picks last year. So those are some pieces that New Prairie had going into this year, but they lost a lot. To start, they had 3 senior All-State guys last year. Noah Mungia had over 2,000 yards of total offense, 24 touchdowns on the ground, which I think led the team, and I know he led the team in all-purpose yards. They had Jacob Mrozinski. He was an O-lineman, holding down that O-line, was also an All-State guy last year. And Tavian Ortman, I was looking at his stats today, he had 44 tackles, led him last year. So, that's a guy that's tough to lose. And Dallas Ryans also. He was their leading receiver and was 3rd in all-purpose yards last year. So, can we say New Prairie is the same team from a year ago? That could be tough to tell. Again, it's week 1. That's why you can't bat 1,000 on this initial top 10 ranking. So we'll see where LaPorte goes. I think their main problem going into this year was who was going to be the quarterback. I had my share of doing the preseason previews, and we saw that I think a quarterback got thrown into halfway through the season. In conference play, and I think they found their guy in Aiden Penziel. He's a sophomore and he had 200. I think. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who listens on these stats, but we found he had 218 passing yards and two touchdowns through the air. Again, a sophomore starting off, your first game against New Prairie,
absolutely.
Doing that, upsetting them possibly. It's that's storybook. And they also got Ali Kring, senior wide receiver. He was one of the players to watch, I think, on that preview, and he had 117 yards through the air. Again, correct us if we're wrong, and he had a tutty. So they got some weapons, and we'll see. They played at the Inferno next week, so that should be a good game.
Yeah, although Lowell is coming off that loss, it will be interesting to see if LaPorte can start the season 2-0. You mentioned it, how quarterback is obviously one of the most important positions in high school football, and although a sophomore, he showed that he has great poise, and he could be the guy for multiple years for the Slicers as, they're a team trying to come up in the region. There's a lot of teams who can make a case in the rankings. Another team that has a very big game on their hands, the Andrean 59ers. After losing to Maryville last week in the Battle of Broadway, now you have to go face off against the state champs and the Valpo Vikings. Although they lost to Penn, still one of the best teams that the region has to offer. But back to Maryville, or I should say Andrean, a team that lost Drake Bowen, lost a couple of guys to the transfer portal, and now has to go home after a tough loss and play arguably a better team in Valpo.
Right.
What do you want to see from Andrean to, I guess you can call it an upset win?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, they got to fight. That's really it. Home crowd's going to be crazy. It's always a tough place to play because it's grass. They're in their home element, and just being in front of the home crowd to start against a team like that will be fun. Yeah, it was looking at their team going into the year, Andrean, of course, you use a lot. When you lose Mr. Indiana, Notre Dame, enrollee right now, who may even get some playing time this Saturday against Navy, that's tough to replace.
Yeah.
And then they were really hit hard in the transfer portal. They do have some pieces. I like the Finley kid, who I think led the state in interceptions last year. Quarterback's nice, Ballantyne. They do have some pieces. I mean, we'll see where they go. It's a young team. Valpo will not be an easy test, but they just got to fight, and they could find themselves at least on this list and maybe get an upset. We'll see. That'll be a good game.
Yeah. One of the last teams we'll talk about with the honorable mentions was River Forest. One of the teams that won and weren't in our top 10, but they're right there. They play a team who was ranked last year, the Calumet Warriors, who lost to Plymouth, a chance for the Ingots to go 2-0 in their season. For River Forest, you have all these teams who seem very close to one another. And the honorable mentions for River Forest, although Calumet, they're coming off that sour taste of a loss where they came in number 8, I believe, in our week 1 rankings. For River Forest, what do you think they have to do coming into this road matchup?
I mean, that's a big game for both teams. With the GSSC, almost you could say wide open right now with Hanover, who's reigned supreme in that conference. Who is now in the NCC. River Forest, they just got to rely on their playmakers. I like Aiden Silver. I think he's the quarterback, and Caleb Short had a great game against East Chicago last week. So River Forest, I mean, looking at their team, they were 6-4 last year, but they've been solid middle to higher of the pack of the GSSC. So if there's a game to look at for who was going to win that conference, River Forest versus Calumet might be it right there. It was a tough loss for Calumet last week, but I think they'll bounce back again. Week 1, it's tough to judge. And, again, new coach, salary at Charles Salary at Calumet. So, just got to figure things out for Calumet, and we'll see how that game goes.
Yeah, so we'll start with our top 10 rankings. We'll start from number 10 and make our way down. Number 10 is the Morton Governors, 1-0 so far. They defeated Portage 32-23. According to Dave Melton on Twitter, it was their first DAC win in 40 years for a Hammond school, led by some great players in Freddie Brown and LeBron Hill. A big win for Morton. It seems like they've got a team with a lot of athletes and a lot of guys who can make some plays out there.
Right. I labeled them as a scary team coming into this year. I mean, it was a rough season last year, and I really like their young pieces they got going on. Again, LeBron Hill, junior receiver with 2 tutties. Freddie Brown, who's both sides of the ball player, 12 tackles, and I mean, he could do it all. I know they had a 1,000-yard receiver running back coming back this year too. Jalen Arnold, shout out to him, sophomore linebacker. He had 13 tackles on the day. I think that led the team. I mean, looking at this game against Portage, could that say a lot about Morton or say a lot about Portage? Looking at Portage preseason review, they graduated a lot of talent. Their top 3 rushers and top 2 receivers. So we'll see where Morton stands. This is going to be a big week for them. This is one of 2 of our top 10 team matchups. They travel to Hanover, and we should see really how they look going into that game.
Yeah, we'll go into that a little bit more when we talk about Hanover and see what number they come into our rankings. Number 9, Hammond Central. They are 1-0. They started their year a 29-12 win over South Bend, Washington. They're not going to play till Saturday, so they will have Friday night off, but will play Saturday. This was a team who you could say has one of the best players in the area.
Yeah, I'm high on that kid. Deshaun Woods, man. He had probably the best game of the week. 222 yards on the ground, 3 rushing touchdowns, and I think he had about a 70-yard pick six to really close it out. I found the stat, out of 460 of his team's all-purpose yards, he had 327 of them. So that is the amount of impact that kid has on the team. And he's only a junior, which is why I'm high on this team. Jamal Morris, a fellow junior linebacker, 13 tackles. He had 2 sacks. Anthony Hinton, another linebacker who's a junior, another 8 tackles, 2 sacks. So it was a pretty dominant win from what I saw from Hammond Central, defense and offense. So we'll see, again, TF South Saturday, I saw. So that That should be interesting. I saw that would be if they were to win that game, that's the first 2-0 start for Central in their short 3-year history. So hey, I mean that'll be.
Absolutely.
We'll see what happens.
Well, when you have a guy like Deshaun Woods, I feel like you can win any game possible just because he has that dynamic ability. You talked about it: 3 rushing touchdowns, 222, a pick 6. I mean, you name it, he can do it. It seems like, and when you have a player who can do all these special things, a guy who's a top premier athlete here in the area, I mean, I feel like you can say Hammond Central, they can win any game just because they have a serious, really good player on their team. So now we'll go to number 8. The Highland Trojans 1-0. They defeated Griffith in a close one, 27-23. Interesting, we got, I know, some favorites, Jay Simmons and, of course, Chris Ramirez. Happy that Highland was able to get that win last week. A close game, but they had some key plays, some key players, and they also have a big matchup coming up this Friday at Whiting against the Oilers. Both teams going into that game 1-0.
We'll see. I like that game a lot. That should be a solid game. Shout out Jason Lawrence, who had a great game against Griffith.
Yeah.
115 all-purpose yards, give or take, a touchdown, and I guess he had a great game-winning pick. Again, looking at this, it's important to start strong as a team, and they have not. Highland has not started 2-0 in Pete Koulianos' tenure. They haven't started 2-0 in 7 years.
Yeah.
So conference play starts week 3, so you got to hit the ground running in that tough NCC, and if they could do something against Whiting, that'll be great for the Trojans.
It was a close game last year, Whiting, and then I mean, it seems like 2 teams that are very evenly matched.
Yeah.
One of those ground and pound games. This is one of those games where you're really gonna have to put some hard work in there to come out with a victory. So we'll go to number 7. This was one of the teams that were already in our top 10 rankings, but lost in a very close game. The Michigan City Wolves. They fell to Warsaw 17-13. It's a very tough start for them on the schedule, but let's be honest, this is a team full of talent and full of guys who already are going D1, and maybe a couple of guys who could go D1 in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's a tough team to rank low. We're going to give them another chance. Again, having a guy like Jaden Hart, Syracuse commit, Deion Smith holding down the O-line, going to Ball State. I like their quarterback, too, and I like Coach French. I was lucky enough to talk to him, and I like what he's bringing to the team. They lost by 28 to Warsaw last year. So to say this loss wasn't an improvement already a year ago, I think they're moving in the right direction. Lafayette, Jefferson that'll be tough.
Yeah.
Week 2, we'll see where they go. They just got to hold on to the ball. I think they had 3 interceptions last week. I don't know if there are any more turnovers, but defense kind of did their job. They forced some turnovers of their own. So we'll see where they go. Big week for them, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you have, a senior quarterback who's been there, you have the running back who's going to Syracuse and a defensive lineman who is going to Ball State, those will come together at some point during the season. They will get those wins. They'll have that run. They'll have that streak. And, I feel like it's one, like you said, week 1, you can't really tell who's going to be at the top and who's going to be at the bottom because Valpo, we'll talk about later, lost last year, first game of the year, and they were state champs. So, I think for Michigan City, a team that has a lot of great players, if they can just get hot at the end of the year and kind of find that recipe, they can really, have something special for them, at Michigan City. At number 6, no bias at this one. I like this one a lot. Lake Central High School, as a former Indian, beating Munster once again, this time 46-14, and obviously we'll talk about him probably throughout the year, the Iowa commit. Xavier Williams, 170 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns scored. And for Lake Central, it just seems like if they're going to finally be over 500 for the first time since 2014, this really could be the team to do it.
Yeah, shout out as a former Mustang, a tough loss again. That's always a fun battle.
What were they thinking, having a Mustang and an Indian, host a show together?
You tell me, man. You tell me. No, we're okay friends. We may fight after this, but we'll keep it cordial on the air. Shout out Max Lazinski. I know you guys are going to be watching this. He had both touchdowns for Munster, but
there you go.
Xavier Williams. What more can you say?
Yeah.
You explained 11.3 yards per carry that's video game numbers.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to get off to a hot start, you got to give it to him. A couple other players, again, Lamar Richardson, 57 yards through the air. Jeffrey Lucas, 10 tackles on the day. they just got to start 2-0, man.
Yeah.
We got it here. They haven't started 2-0 in 10 years.
I was there from 2015 to 2019. Never started 2-0, as we talked about. Always 1-0. And, last year they just closely fell to Providence Catholic. I believe it was only 2 points. They seem to be better than what they were last year. And, not to look ahead for Lake Central, but they have Portage the next week, a team they could beat as well. And, like I said, you don't want to get ahead of yourself, but for Lake Central to have somewhat of a 3-0 start, I mean, that's what you would want, because after that, it's rough, because you have Crown Point, you have Valpo, you have Maryville, Chesterton. I mean, these first 3 weeks for Lake Central are so important to get momentum going, to get the bus rolling, to get that momentum just to feel good about your season. And, when you do have those tough games, even if you're maybe not looked at as one of the best teams, but you're come in 3-0, 4-0, you feel pretty good. You feel pretty confident. And I think for Lake Central over the years, that's what they've been missing, is confidence. And when you have a guy like Xavier Williams, you have a senior linebacker, a leader on the defense like Jeffrey Lucas, things could play out like that. We'll see. But Providence Catholic, that's going to be a good game between two teams.
And if they, as a student going there, if the team gets off to that hot start, the student rallies behind the team.
Oh, absolutely. I think, the student body has always been proud of their team no matter what. Throughout the years, I know that, the more fans are coming out, and, when they built all those new facilities for them, it was a big transition for them. And, it's been a while since, they've won that sectional game, that they've been over 500. And, if a tide's going to turn for Rick Good, I think this is the year, because when you're going to have the type of talent he has this year. So, we're going to see there. I mean, I'm sure, Lake Central, the team, we'll talk about multiple times throughout the year. We've said Portage next week, Indians versus Indians. Then you have Valpo, you have Crown Point, you have Maryville, 3 teams that are going to be at top of our rankings. Lake Central could play spoiler. We'll see.
We'll see. That's all we could do.
So we're going to go at number 5, but right after the break, we'll go through 5 through 1, and we'll kind of, talk about those teams as we've been doing here so far. But as you're watching Region Football Weekly in our beautiful Centier Bank studio on the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.
When life takes you places and you can't get to the store, shop online with Strack and Van Til To Go. Our to-go service is easy to use, and it can save you time and money. Once your order is in, our own Strack and Van Til team preps your order with care. For delivery or pickup, enjoy the convenience of letting our to-go team shop for you. Enjoy your special moments. Sign up online today at shop.strackandvantil.com.
Hi, I'm Crowell Company's Lantern Man. I'll cover your motorcycle. I'll be with you on the water. I'll be with you on the snow. I'll cover your insurance needs wherever you go. I'll be at Crowell Agency from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. As Crowell Company's Lantern Man, I'm your insurance superhero.
Crowell Companies, the insurance professionals in Highland, Maryville, and Michigan City.
From schools to stadiums, hospitals and bridges, everywhere you look, union carpenters are building Indiana. With jobs and skilled trades in high demand, there's never been a better time to start building your future. As an apprentice, you'll earn a debt-free college degree, earn while you learn, and receive great benefits like healthcare and retirement. So what are you waiting for? Visit carpenters.com to learn more. Visit carpenters.com and start building your future today.
Thinking about what to do after high school? Consider a career with Boilermakers Local 374. As a Boilermaker apprentice, you'll earn while you learn. We offer excellent wages and benefits, and as part of our no-cost hands-on apprenticeship program, you'll learn from the best in state-of-the-art training centers and on the job. Become a union Boilermaker and get on your way to a great career. Find out more, visit www.local374.org or call 219-845-1000.
Growing up in Northwest Indiana, I am proud that my family's been doing business here for nearly 100 years, which started with my grandfather, John Gladish. Over my career, I've witnessed families being torn apart by the negligence of others, and everything from unguarded openings at construction sites to reckless driving on our roads. Our experienced attorneys, paralegals, and staff know that insurance companies and their lawyers will go to great lengths to avoid paying compensation. Do not waste your one and only opportunity to seek fair compensation for your loss. Give the Gladish Law Group a call and put our team to work for you.
Welcome back to Region Football Weekly here in our beautiful Centier Bank studio. I'm Jack Theo, alongside me, Mike Dewan. If you're just joining us, we talked about some of our rankings, which teams are right on the bubble and may make our top 10 for Week 3. And, of course, we went through 10 through 6. We'll start with number 5, and we'll go to team number 1. But, like we said, number 5, it's going to be Hanover Central defeating Wheeler 40-17. And I'll tell you one thing, Mike, this Hanover team seems like they could have a special season on their hand.
Yeah, we got them ranked high for a reason. Their win Week 1, something we've seen before.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
They do work in that conference, and which is why they're in the NCC now. So we'll see. Again, they got some pieces that, you know. Shout out Caden Verrett. He was on we put him on our countdown as a player to watch, but he had over 180 plus total yards on the game. I think 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Without, and if there wasn't a Deshaun Woods, I think he would have the best junior performance
Absolutely.
of the week. He's somebody that you need a runner in the NCC.
Yeah,
and
for
I
sure.
think they got their guy. Matt Kuntz, signal caller, had a good day, 218 through the air.
Yeah.
4 touchdowns of his own, and a couple defensive pieces that are notable. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've heard people say Caden Verrett is poised to be one of the best running backs in the region. And he's only a junior, and he's only going to get better. And, of course, Brian Parker, their coach, mentioned how Dylan Bowen, their defensive back, is one special kid, and he can really be one of those players that we talk about for a long time. And, look, they've got a tough matchup, 10th-ranked Morton. So, both teams who are 1-0, but for Hanover Central, it just seems like, or I should say both teams honestly have dudes who can play football. They have athletes on the field.
Right.
They have playmakers who can really change the outcome of a game. And I'm excited for this one. I think this game can go down to the wire, be very close, and I think we can see some stellar plays from both sides.
yeah, it's a lot to prove for both. There's talks, who knows how big Morton's win was against Portage.
Absolutely.
People are talking about if that was a fluke, that's a prove-it game for them, and it's a prove-it game for Hanover. Conference play for them, and the NCC starts Week 3, and this is a really good early season test for the Wildcats to kind of hopefully ease into the NCC play, but if they want to make their mark and let the NCC know that they're a team to not be messed around with, this is a game to do it.
And they've got the guys to do it. A leader on offense, a running back who can change the game with his legs, and guys on defense who can make plays and hold offenses to a very low score. So we'll see how they do against 10th-ranked Morton. We'll go to number 4. This was a tough one. Valpo will come in at number 4, a team that won the state championship, but they lost to Penn. It was a back-and-forth game, but Penn ultimately won 38-21. It's the most points Valpo has given up since 2021. It was a big day for Nolan McCullough, Penn's quarterback. But, for Valpo, it's a tough task for them because they are a great team.
Right.
Week 1, you play Penn, who's a really good team. I mean, both teams are really good, but Penn has always been up top, one of the best high school football coaches in Indiana. I mean, it's really not fair just because they really are one of the best teams in the region. It's just they lost and other teams behind them won. Right. But still a team that we're going to talk about every week.
Of course. Again, the teams that won, that jumped them, I mean, they either beat great teams or won in dominant fashion. And we mentioned this in the countdown, but as that game kind of turned into a wake-up call for Valpo, we know what happened last year. They got smoked, 35-7, I believe, to Penn, traveling to their place. And I mean, they hung in it, of course, this game, but we both know how Valpo's season went for the rest of the year last year. So we can't drop them too far, but it could be a wake-up call for Bill Marshall's squad.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a team that has a lot of senior leaders, Justin Clark, Travis Davis, and Ty Veen, who were all 3 of the leaders. They're all seniors, and that's the type of players you want if your team's going to go far. And for Valpo, although they lost, I mean, they got hot at the right time. And that's, it's something Jay and I talked about in our, wrap-up show last week is, some of these teams, maybe they're 0-1, but it doesn't really mean their season is over. This is still a lot of football left to be played. And if you can't get hot, even if you were to go 0-2 the first 2 weeks, if you go on a run and get hot, that's all that matters. You know, you can be 10-0, 11-0, and get to sectionals, regional, semi, and lose, but it only matters if your team is hot at the right time.
Exactly.
So Valpo did it last year. We'll see. Although Andrean is not one of our top 10, they are an honorable mention. Still a tough place to play.
Of course.
And you have an Andrean team that they're not happy with their outcome last week. They have a lot to prove. And obviously Valpo has a lot to prove. So that's going to be a great game. That's one of our games we'll be broadcasting. We'll talk about that in a little bit later.
Yep.
Coming in at number 3, the Hobart Brickies. They defeated Chesterton 16-13. It was a battle. Hobart had some big plays, including T.J. Caldwell hit 122 receiving yards. Their quarterback, Johnny Sorensen, Lake Central transfer, over 200 passing yards and 2 total touchdowns. You mentioned it as a battle at the Brickyard, they like to say.
Man, I was there,
Hobart,
man. It was
Hobart,
awesome.
Yeah, you were there. Kind of talk us through that one.
That was my first game at the Brickyard as a spectator, and wow, I mean that place is something else. You know? It's tough to win a game there, but they haven't beat Chesterton in I think a couple years. So just getting that off their chest, that's a way to start the year. And you got to shout out the 2 transfers, Caldwell and Sorensen, who really they scored both touchdowns for Hobart. So I mean they did it all for Hobart, and they're fitting in just nicely. So we'll see. This is going to be a big week for them that you can talk about a little bit going in.
Yeah, I believe T.J. Caldwell before this year he was one of the top players in the region. So to get him, I mean, according to our stats, he and Calumet set receiving records, yards and touchdowns. He had 1,300 receiving yards and 16 touchdowns for Calumet.
Not terrible.
So yeah, for Hobart to get a transfer quarterback who's a senior at Lake Central,
right,
and get a transfer receiver who's a senior in T.J. Caldwell, that's a winning recipe. And,
not terrible.
And that's going to help them, and they're going to need that. What is probably the game of the week? They will face off against our number 2 team, the Maryville Pirates. They defeated Andrean 40-13, Battle of Broadway. They needed a lot of depth. They got it. Those guys stepped up, and we might see some players who weren't in the game last week come and play this week. But it's not going to be an easy task. At Maryville, 2 and 3 are going at it. This can be a game, we could say, game of the year possibly, with how good both of these teams are.
Yeah, it was tough to rank them. 1 week we had them at 2. We had Hobart at 2. 1 week we had them at 3. Again, with the Maryville rumors, we heard that players were not suiting up. Some notable starters were not there for the Lowell scrimmage in week 1 against Andrean. And then, again, reports are now showing that the players will be back in purple for this game on Friday. So it was tough to where to rank them, but I think we could safely say put them at 2. No matter who's on the field, they got some athletes, and they showed it last Friday.
Yeah, I think Dante Pope's going to be the guy we talk about a lot. And when you win a game 40-13 against another quality opponent with, some guys out, that's still going to look very good on your resume.
Definitely.
And, Maryville, they've beaten Hobart for the past 4 years. They've only lost twice at home since 2019, the Pirates. So not an easy place to play. No. I know a lot of fans come out, and I know a lot of fans will come out for that game. Now time for our number 1 team, and I'm sure a lot of you can assume which one this one will be, as we've named a pretty hefty amount of our teams, but it'll be the Crown Point Bulldogs coming in at number 1, defeating Lowell 42-7. It was a dominant performance on both sides of the ball. Nolan Ehrlich, I mean, you can I don't know if you can play any better the way he did. 300-plus passing yards. He threw to 10-plus receivers. And the defense didn't even give up a first down until the third quarter. Apparently. And, you go to the Inferno, which is very hard to win at, and you play that dominant. I think it's very easy you're going to end up as the number 1 team in the RSN rankings.
From what we got, I did a little bit of research, and that was Lowell's biggest home loss since the year I was born, so 2001.
Wow.
That is, if you do that against a program like Lowell, you're gonna be moving up the rankings. The consensus was, how does Crown Point get these transfers and gel them with the team, but also how will they live up to the regular season they had last year? J.J. Johnson was one of the premier players in the area, and he graduated this past season. He's at DePaul, and Noah Ehrlich steps in, junior, coming from Hobart, and just put on a show. If there's a way to start your career for the Bulldogs, he's the guy. So
this is Crown Point team with you could argue as much talent as there is in the region. You have the Clark brothers,
Right,
who
Buffalo
are going
commits.
to Buffalo.
Yep.
You have Patrick Clegg, one of the top receivers, not just in the region, but the state of Indiana. Yeah, he hasn't decided where he's going yet, but he has offers from D1 schools to transfer from Andrean.
Right.
He could be a huge piece, especially for Ehrlich, at the quarterback position. And, you just look through all of this. I mean, they call him the highlight reel, Clax III. And this was a team that went undefeated until the Class A 6 sectional against Lafayette Jefferson.
Right.
So,
We'll see.
I mean, with how the transfer portal is, we talk about how everybody loses players. And, for Crown Point, they didn't lose anybody to the portal. They lost players because of graduation.
Right.
And they probably benefited the most off of this transfer portal. I mean, the guys they got are guys that are going to be playing on Saturdays, and who knows, could play on Sundays. But,
Right.
they're a team that's going to be tough to beat. And, they got Chicago Taft, their first game of the year. And, this is a game that means more than football.
Right. I think we could talk about that in a little bit, but it's, that's not just, I think it's the first time they've ever played, and we'll get more into that when the time comes, but that's going to be more than just a football game this Friday.
Yeah, a lot of both sides coming together and playing a football game. These teams, this wasn't even planned, last year. A couple months ago, they're like, let's do this matchup, and
Right.
I believe that it's going to be something great. I think both teams are going to put on a show, and we'll see if the Bulldogs can keep that #1 ranking,
Right.
and we'll see how that looks. We're not done yet here on Region Football Weekly. We're going to kind of wrap up the show after this break and talk about which games you can view on Region Sports Network tomorrow night, Friday, and kind of go over which games that we're going to watch for. But once again, you're watching Region Football Weekly on our Sent to Your Bank studio here on the Region Sports Network, the only game in town. Back here on Region Football Weekly, I'm Jack Thiel, alongside me, Mike Dewan. If you're just joining us, we went over all our rankings and honorable mentions. We're going to wrap up the show now to kind of transition into tomorrow night's action. And here are your game nights built by Von Tobel. We have 3 games on tap for you. 2 of them are going to be audio only. 1 will be video. The only video game will be Valpo at Andrean. You have Matt Sossler and Doug Nelson on the call. So once a game, that will be on video. Our second game will be audio. It will be Chicago Taft at Crown Point. You have Michael Bradner and Jay Simmons on the call. And then our other audio game that we'll have will be Hobart and Maryville. Mike Zajac, Josh Huddleston, and Doug Aschenbach will be on the call for that game. Reminder, 2 of our 3 will be audio only, and you can view those games on our website, regionsports.com, on our Facebook page, facebook.com/regionsports, and our YouTube page, youtube.com/regionsports. So, Mike, we've got all these great games. We've got 2 top 10 matchups.
Talk about a slate.
Yeah, we got a great slate. I'm curious to know what is that game you're going to be looking out for. It doesn't have to be the best game on hand, but maybe it's a game where it's going to show you a lot about who a team is. It's going to show you if this team is for real or this team has some work to do at practice in the film. I'm curious to know which one you might have your eye on.
How much time we got? I'm going to start. Let's do, I think, Morton Hanover again. We brought that up
absolutely.
a little bit. 5v10. Hanover, again, prove it game for the NCC. Morton game, just prove it just to be in the region. Just prove it to earn their spot in this list. Hanover, it seems like whenever they're in these contests, they just run a team out the water.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens this week. It's going to be a good game, I think. It'll be a close one. Can't pick a winner yet, but we'll see what happens tomorrow night.
Yeah,
I'm excited for that.
I think that's a good one. I think Morton has a lot to prove, and they got the talent to do it. And Hanover, I think we all know that they're going to be one of the top teams in the region, and a game like this could even solidify that thought even more. So I'm going to go with one more. I know this is a little biased, but I'm curious to see Lake Central and Providence Catholic.
Oh,
I just want to know,
homer.
can Lake Central finally do it? You know, it's been 10 years since I started 2-0. That was when they had the burial grounds, the old football stadium, and back where the stands weren't big, the field was all grass
baby.
and it was raining. That field got torn up, and
Right.
you know, since they built this huge stadium with all the turf and the amazing stands and facilities, this could be a good opportunity for them. And obviously, with a team against Portage, who Lake Central could feel very confident. Another home game they have. I believe they have 3 home games in a row. Starting this week. So I'm curious to see, because I think Lake Central has always had trouble getting over that hump. But now you have Xavier Williams. Now you have Jeffrey Lucas at linebacker. You have a good quarterback. You have a couple of good receivers, too. Can this be the year that Lake Central, I'm not saying they're going to go all the way, but it's just the time they finally get some momentum, start, the program to where you can expect them to finish 500. I know Rick Good, he's done a good job there.
No
and
pun intended.
He's I did not think of that one. That's a good one, DeLon. But, I think he wants this program to succeed more than anybody.
Right.
And he's done the necessary steps to try and get this program to succeed. And it's going to come down to Friday night. So I'm curious to see how Lake Central will do. A big one against Munster. Obviously, they've done that for many years.
You
but
homer. Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think, when we talk about what's going to be telling for us, I feel like a lot of our teams in top 10, we know they'll probably be there throughout the year. But for Lake Central, we don't know what's going to be happening with them, and a chance to go 2-0. That's my game. That's going to tell me if this team can have a great year or a year where maybe they just need to go back to the drawing board and look at some things. So that is one of mine. I think what we'll talk about is Hobart and Maryville as well.
Yeah, we got to bring
2
them
and
up.
3.
I mean, we're gonna be there. That'll be audio only, sadly.
Yep.
But it's a game you can't miss. 2v3. Again, the question is Maryville going to have all these pieces back? I think no matter who they throw out there, they're going to be competitive. And they're dominant at home. They've won the last 4 Week 2 matchups against Hobart. They've been one of the most consistent programs in a positive manner over the past, 5 years. So that's, again, prove-it game for Hobart.
Yep.
They've kind of struggled in the DAC. They couldn't really get Chesterton's number for the past few seasons.
Absolutely.
And they got over that hump. So we'll see how they do against Maryville. Again, whoever they throw out, that's going to be a great game.
And I'm sure Hobart has to feel pretty good with Sorensen at quarterback.
Oh, for sure.
And TJ Caldwell is going to have a big impact on that game. Maryville's really going to have to do their homework on him.
Yeah.
And we talked about what he did at Calumet and what he did with his first game at Hobart. I know against Chesterton, I believe it was the third quarter, had insane jumping grab, and it's just everything you'd want. It's the fundamentals were all there from him. It's something you see on Saturdays. It's something you see on Sundays.
What he does, they don't have to rely on. We put this in our countdown, and you don't have to rely on running the ball 24/7. They had a guy like Trey Gibson last year who was fantastic, over 2,000 yards of offense, but a guy like Caldwell, makes defenses use the field all 120 yards and all 54-yard width of the field. And it opens up the run game. Willie Shearer is their junior running back, and he had, I think, 80-plus yards on the ground. So it was, with him, it's a nice balance of offense. And
I think
it'll be a great game, man. I'm excited.
When you talk about not running all the time and passing, but if you're able to establish that run game, and the play action could work so nice for Hobart, to get Caldwell on the man-to-man coverage. I mean, he's tall, he's lengthy. If you throw it up to him, he's probably going to come down with it.
Right.
So it's one of those special, receivers that can just do it all out there. And if you're a quarterback in Sorensen, I think you owe him a nice dinner probably after every game, just because the way he plays out there. And when you're a quarterback that has a receiver like that, you feel like you can throw the ball anywhere.
It's a good toy to have, especially going into your first year on the team.
Absolutely.
He's a guy you want.
And it's different from Lake Central to Hobart. There's a lot of different things. I think that
even Cal to Hobart, man, it's an interesting.
It's a far
transition
drive too.
Yeah.
It's about 40 minutes. So a transition going from Lake Central to Hobart. Your friends are all at Lake Central probably. You learned under probably the Lake Central system since you were there as a freshman. Now you come in Hobart, a lot of expectations, and you're the guy.
Right.
And for Lake Central, he probably was never like the guy, but here he is the guy. He's the guy that's going to help them lead to victories. And a win here, you argue they could be number 2 just because.
We'll find out, man.
Yeah,
It'll be good.
I mean, yeah, we'll find out. But when you can start 2-0, it's always a good sign, especially for a team like Hobart, who, it's not an easy start. Chesterton week 1,
no,
and now Maryville week 2. That's not easy at all. So to have those 2 wins under your belt, you feel pretty good about yourself.
Going in the conference.
Yeah, we'll see. And before we go, we'll tell you all the scores going on throughout this week. We'll start it off. The Culver Cavaliers against the South Central Satellites. Like we mentioned earlier, LaPorte Slicers against the Lowell Red Devils. Michigan City will face off against Lafayette Jefferson. River Forest will try to stay undefeated against Calumet.
Big game.
Now the Munster Mustangs and the Griffith Panthers, who will have their first win of the year.
Stangs, come on.
No bias from
no
Dewan
bias,
there.
No bias.
One of the games that we didn't talk about much, but I'm sure will be a close one, Highland Trojans going to Whiting. Trojans number 8 in our rankings.
Game.
Then you have the Hammond Morton Governors, Hanover Central. We've talked about that one pretty much. Lake Station against West Central. The Bowman Academy Eagles against the IC Catholic Prep all the way in Illinois. The Valpo Vikings against the Andrean 59ers. Probably our game of the week, Hobart number 3 against number 2 Maryville. That one we'll keep our eye close on. Chicago Taft against the Crown Point Bulldogs.
We got to talk about
number
that
1,
a little
Dewan.
bit.
Dewan's got the
think,
information. Dewan, you take it
again,
over.
It's a game bigger than football.
Yeah.
The story going in, why is Crown Point playing Taft?
For the first time,
why
are
first
they
time
playing a
maybe,
team in Illinois?
maybe ever.
Yeah.
We had Coach Buzia on our table talk, and he brought up his fight with leukemia that he got over in 2020, and he mentioned we have it posted, I think, on a reel somewhere, but he mentioned that the Taft principal, Mark, excuse me if I'm wrong, Grishaber, called him when he was in the hospital, and he said, "Coach, when you get out of this thing, our teams are going to play each other." And this was when Coach Buzia was at Flossmoor, so they were, relative, peers at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But Buzia was like, "Why do you want to do that? I don't think they've ever really played each other up to that point."
Yeah.
And Grishaber, again, excuse me, but he said, because I'm a leukemia survivor. So it's, they held up their word. Buzia survived, and Grishaber, they have that both in common, and now they're doing this for a bigger cause.
It's a game that's bigger than football.
Completely.
And I'm sure we'll see a lot of support and a lot of people coming out for this game from both sides, from Crown Point,
definitely,
from Chicago Taft. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of people just getting involved, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of great charities there, and just organizations there for this amazing game that, like we said, it's more than football at this point.
It's a kids game, man.
It's
the beauty of it.
At the end of the day, it is a high school football game, but also this one specifically is for a bigger cause
completely
than what the score is on the scoreboard. Whoever has the most touchdowns in the game, whoever has the most rushing yards, it's more than that. And I'm excited to see the turnout.
It's the beauty of sports, man. Bringing people together, no matter what teams are playing, or
absolutely.
At the end of the day, it's just a kids game.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We're excited for that, to cover that, and that whole cause is going to be awesome.
Well, they won't be the only region team facing off against a team from Illinois. Lake Central at home.
There we are.
Will face off against Providence Catholic in their first game. Then the Boone Grove Wolves against South Bend Clay. The Wheeler Bearcats played at Kankakee Valley Cougars. The Warsaw Tigers played at Chesterton Trojans.
That'll be a good game.
That will be. Two teams,
like
0-1, but two teams who...
Warsaw won.
Or I should say, Warsaw did win. Two teams that played very close games, though, so we'll see how that one goes. The Northwood Panthers face off against the Portage Indians. Rensselaer will face off against North Newton. We do have 3 games on Saturday. Gary Westside will face off against EC Central. Thornton Fractional South will face off against our number 19, Hammond Central. And then the Osceola Grace Eagles will face off against Bishop Knoll Warriors.
At the Lucas Oil, I think I heard.
They're
down in Indy.
That's pretty neat.
Shout out to Knoll. I got their first win in a year or two. So shout out to them.
It's a pretty neat opportunity playing at Lucas Oil. I know the Bears and Colts just played there last Saturday. So that's a pretty unique opportunity. I'm sure those kids are going to...
Every kid's dream, man.
Oh, absolutely. That's where, state is for football.
Right.
Maybe a little preview.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. A lot of year to go, so that's it was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's going to wrap it up. Region Football Weekly. Like I said, we have 3 games on tap for you tomorrow night, where you can view them on Facebook, YouTube, or on our website. Of course, we'll do our pre-show and our wrap-up show tomorrow night. I'm pretty sure I'm on that. And then Mike Zamia as well might be on that.
The other
as
Mike.
well.
Another
The other
Mike, yeah.
We have a lot of Mikes here.
Too many.
And we have
Too
a lot of
many.
guys with a Z last name. It's a
Yeah.
weird thing. We got Zach Zanelli, who is producing right now, so there's another Z last name. We did have Claude Martinez as well, working hard as he
course.
always is, and making sure we're able to give you guys some amazing products. But for Region Football Weekly, I'm Jack Thiel. Of course, big thank you to Mike Dewan for sitting in on this one in our beautiful Centier Bank Studios that you're watching this on the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.